Air Canada's Chatbot is throwing out deals. TikTok is going horizontal. We dive into the world of analytics and we say goodbye to an old friend. All this and more on today's Strong Coffee Drip. Hi again, everyone. I'm Brian from Strong Coffee Marketing. We have returned from our brief vacation and work overload hiatus, and we're happy to be back. I'm even more happy to be joined by Sir Duncan of Vancouver and Sir Ian of Scotland. Welcome back, gentlemen. Good to see you. I've missed you.
Thanks, Brian.
I've missed you a lot. Ian, you are, even though you're from Scotland, you're not a sir, right?
No, sadly not. I'm one of the few
that isn't. And you're not a lord or anything either?
Knighted or anything? No? Okay.
No. You're not even knighted?
Oh, no, that's interesting.
We'd probably have to give him a raise if he was knighted. So.
True.
Yeah.
Okay, something to put on the resume that you'd be knighted. I'm sure that would help. Okay, so we've been, like I mentioned, we've been gone for a while for a variety of reasons, but we're happy to be back. And also, we've scheduled over the next 3 weeks to record 3 times. So the hiatus was short-lived, but there's been some really big news stories in the past month. Some things that we've seen, and it's like, oh, I wish we were recording this week because there's something big going on. The potential TikTok ban, Reddit going public. I believe they go public today as we're recording. Websites built with Google business profiles are now gone, something we brought up in one of the other podcasts. So for all of us here, guys, what would you say has been the big headline in the time that we've been gone since early February? What's been the big headline for you? Duncan, we'll start with you.
I'd say it's probably the Reddit IPO. It's been interesting to kind of watch the battle that is happening. So like when Reddit posted their IPO, they had said that one of the risks was their own subreddit, Wall Street Bets, shorting it. So they're like, a lot of people were talking about shorting the Reddit IPO. In general, like IPOs are kind of scary. You have these hedge funds that are jacking up the prices. You have the Reddit CEO that's apparently taking like $190 million a year, while you have unpaid moderators on Reddit. So there's a lot of dynamics happening there. There's a lot of, it's so interesting to watch a platform make these decisions while not necessarily consulting the people that manage the product itself. You also had the IPO offering moderators shares of the company in the initial public offering. But then again, those shares were priced quite highly, as the value of Reddit is questionable, considering it hasn't made actual revenue. And on top of that, the fact that the CEO's taking $190 million a year makes you question a lot of the financial dynamics of the business. So I don't really blame Wall Street Bets for being a little bearish, as they say, or wanting to short this IPO, because frankly, it's one of those ones that you may just want to stay clear of and wait for the dust to settle before you decide if you want to invest or not. But it's very interesting to see basically a platform that has an internal segment that is really against it IPOing, or at least betting against its success as an IPO while this is all happening. So,
talk about like the call is coming from inside the house when they're going public, right? And there's people inside of it that are trying to blow it up. It's like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Ian, how about you? What's been a big headline in the past, let's call it, month or so?
Yeah, I think, as Duncan mentioned, the Reddit IPO is definitely big. The mention of TikTok possibly getting banned in the US is also a big one. There's been a lot of great ones. One that I think we're going to talk about a little later is the situation with Air Canada and their chatbots. Tesla started doing advertising at the request of their shareholders, and think something that they've never really had to do before. There's been a lot of interesting tech news recently.
Yeah, it was a great time to take a hiatus from the podcast because only everything happened, so it worked out well. For me, it's the potential TikTok ban. Now, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to get any further than it is right now in the States. Could somebody step in and buy it? Would they sell it? Does the algorithm come with the sale, which I've read lots about? It's kind of like you can buy the car, but you can't buy the engine. Well, there's no point in buying the car then because you don't get the engine. But that one, I know there's been a lot of people chatting about it, but I don't see it. I don't see it going any further than it is right now. And, if it were to actually get banned in the States, how long before people find another way on it, or something else comes along to take over from it, or does it spin off into something else? Who knows? So, yeah, but lots of really interesting stuff. And Ian, as you mentioned, one of those stories we're going to cover in This or That, and I would say that's a pretty good segue straight into This or That. So, as a marketer, I've got two stories for you. As a marketer, which one of these stories is more interesting to you, and why? Story number one, Ian just referenced it. Air Canada has a chatbot problem. Air Canada has been ordered to compensate a grieving grandchild who claimed to have been misled by the airline's chatbot into purchasing full-priced tickets. The chatbot advised that he could retroactively claim bereavement rate for his tickets. So essentially what happened was this gentleman had to get back for I believe his grandmother had passed, and he needed to buy a ticket to get back home, and went online and talked to the Air Canada chatbot, who basically made up a bereavement policy on the spot. And so he went ahead and bought these tickets assuming he was going to get money back. And despite Air Canada's attempt to distance itself from the chatbot's actions, it was ruled that the airline is responsible for all information on its website, including that provided by interactive components like chatbots. This case represents a rare instance of legal action stemming from misleading advice provided by a chatbot. Very interesting article. And story number two, talking about TikTok. TikTok goes horizontal. TikTok appears to be encouraging creators to produce horizontally shot content. Screenshots shared by users indicate that TikTok is offering increased views to videos shot in landscape format, particularly those exceeding 1 minute in length. This move marks a departure from TikTok's traditional focus on vertical videos, but may be part of its efforts to diversify content types and broaden its appeal. While it seems unusual for TikTok to promote landscape videos, it could be a strategy for expanding its content pool in preparation for future viewing trends, such as viewing in headsets. So we've got the Air Canada chatbot being human and not doing what it's supposed to do, and we've got TikTok experimenting with horizontal videos. Ian, which one of those is more interesting to you? I think I know the answer because you brought it up already. Which one is most interesting to you?
Yeah, I definitely find the Air Canada story more interesting myself. I think it's an interesting warning to people who are considering using new technologies that they perhaps either don't fully understand or don't have full control over, or don't understand the risks that can be associated with that. Also an interesting view into the business itself of Air Canada and the way that it handled the situation. As you say, it tried to distance itself over from the chatbot, saying it couldn't be held liable for anything the chatbot said, and said it couldn't be held liable for anything that any employee would have said either, which I found quite unusual that they would take that stance. So yeah, I think all in all, just an interesting business case, and over such a small amount that they were willing to go to court and be sued over the refund of a single ticket. So I think,
which was like $800 or something. Like,
I don't know what the value was, but yes, it wouldn't have been a significant amount. So yeah, I just think it's an interesting case study, and perhaps something that'll either give people a warning about using tools that they perhaps don't fully understand, or understanding the risks if they do choose to do so.
I feel bad for the chatbot because the chatbot was just becoming human, and it was developing a heart, and it was like, no, you know what? I think a better policy would be this. So it went ahead and made the decision, and now the chatbot is getting its artificial hand slapped for making a nice policy. So, Duncan, what about you? Which one of these is most interesting to you?
I got to say the Air Canada one. There's too many interesting things about it. I think the most interesting thing for me is that the chatbot went away from whatever its pre-programmed responses are. Like, I think we've all used these chatbots before, and out of frustration, eventually picked up the phone and waited on hold for 3 hours to talk to Air Canada agents. But they have a preset programmed responses, as far as I know. I don't think they're really like an AI chatbot. I think they're more just like you give it inputs and it gives you the canned response. So part of me wonders if they were like testing a new chatbot with this system, because it seems to have given it a bit of free rein to do what it wanted to do. The fact that they tried to claim that they weren't held liable for it, though, is kind of a joke. Even if your employees say something incorrect, well, then it just goes back down to the training that the company's providing us. Maybe the employee isn't liable, the chatbot isn't liable, but the business is still liable for the information that they put out to the public, especially if that information is either incorrect or is at a detriment or a financial loss to that person. So they should have just paid it, and it wouldn't have been a big news story. The whole reason why it became a new big news story, not only because AI is in the market right now, but simply because they wanted to fight it, which everyone was like, well, that makes literally no sense. So their PR department messed up pretty bad. They could have just handled the issue, and then it would have been done with. Now, I will just say on the TikTok thing, excuse me, TikTok has always had that kind of horizontal content. They usually just had people say, hey, flip your phone sideways, and then you could use it. But I kind of just think it's just another avenue for them to explore some different types of content. Yeah, I mean, I don't see it being a huge impact to them. I don't see it being a huge change. I suspect the majority of the people that are filming are still going to do it vertically, but I suspect maybe it's for like movies or from other content to try and get it added to TikTok for some more reach. But I think long term it will always be kind of a vertical platform.
I think the thing that's most interesting on the TikTok side for me is the horizontal videos. Okay, fine. Like you said, Duncan, you can do that before, whether it shows up differently or what have you. But it was that TikTok basically was kind of hinting to people, if you try these videos, we'll give you a boost. And it's so, the algorithm, no matter where you are on TikTok or Facebook or Google or whatever, is behind this curtain, and you're not going to see what the algorithm is all about. But for a platform to come out and be like, but if you do this, it's almost like we're going to give you bonus points and boost it to more people to get people to try it. That's quite interesting. And I know, having done a little bit of research on this on TikTok from some people that have tried it, some creators that have tried it, a lot of them say they didn't see any sort of boost. So what's up with that too? So I don't even know how that works. But
we can launch our videos on our TikTok horizontally and see what it does as a test.
Yeah. Okay. We can't yet, Duncan. We don't have enough people yet.
On a quasi-related note, you are correct. The Reddit IPO launched literally about 15 minutes ago.
It's all about timing, Duncan.
It opened up at $34 a share, and right now it's trading around $53 a share. So the Reddit people who would have purchased in the pre-IPO are now up about 60% already on their initial investment. If it stays there, who knows? But so far, it's been a successful IPO for Reddit, so I'm sure their CEO will be happy to take his $190 million.
Yeah, that's about $190 million more than we make combined.
Correct, yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, I hope he does okay. Inflation and stuff, hopefully he can pull through. All right, some good responses there, guys. Yeah, I mean, both of them are interesting stories. The TikTok one for me, just because I'm getting a little bit more into TikTok now that we're putting our podcast clips on there. I'm learning the ins and outs as opposed to just being a viewer, being a creator now. But that Air Canada story is really interesting. I don't really trust the chatbots to begin with, because they're probably not going to tell me what I want to know anyways. But Duncan, to your point, like, did it learn this? Because usually it's got the canned responses, right? So, yeah, what happened where it was like, I'm going to stray off of these canned responses and I'm just going to go for it, and I'm going to tell you what you should hear. So interesting.
Yeah, I've never seen a chatbot. Like, I've seen ChatGPT kind of try and emulate emotions, more like, I'm sorry that happened to you. Here's blah, 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 blah. But I've never seen really a chatbot. Like, I've seen chatbots that just say, like you say, do you guys have bereavement offerings for flights? And then it would like link to the page.
To a page.
I'm very curious how this bot went so awry from that kind of a response, unless they were, like I say, they were testing a little bit more personable chatbot that had a bit more free reign. So I think that part of the story still kind of up in the air. That for
I
me,
think
personally,
the chatbot did actually provide the link to the page, which explained the details accurately. However, it also summarized what was on the page, or had a response pre-programmed about what the page said, which it said directly below it, and the information did not match between those two things. So the information on the page was accurate, but the information it said below was that the person could fly before claiming the refund. If they bought the full price ticket, after they could fly and then get the refund after it was all done and dealt with. And that wasn't the case.
So I think in that case, I suspect that maybe that was initially the policy and Air Canada changed it. And usually the way that those bots work is you have to pre-program the responses in it ahead of time. So if they had changed the website but not changed the chat bot, that
seems more likely. Yeah.
I want the more likely scenario to be that the chatbot got a heart, because that could be like a Disney movie one day where it learns to love people and it gives out advice. Yeah, we'll see. All right, mailbag time, guys. Because we haven't been on for a little bit, a lot of mail, but I found one letter in particular that I think would be very relevant to what we're talking about today. And this is from Hector in Tucson. He writes in, hey guys, where did you go? I missed you. Next time you're going to take a break from the podcast, please send me a text or an email so I'm not sitting here worrying. Even a phone call would work. We're sorry, Hector. We'll do better next time. Anyways, I've spent some time diving into analytics, and I've got two questions. Hector now getting pretty confident in his ability to get through on the email and sending two questions. Question number one, which social media channel do you think offers the best analytics? I've found that it varies so much from channel to channel. And question number two, I'm just starting to get into Google Analytics. What are some of the insights that you find most interesting? Good question, Hector. A loaded question because there's two of them in there. Analytics are something that we look at on a regular basis for our clients. I can answer the social one first. In terms of the channel that offers the most interesting social media analytics for me, far and away is YouTube. YouTube, in my opinion, is clearly the best when it comes to social media analytics. There's lots of great data. The platform generally is quite stable. The analytics, in terms of strange fluctuations, they all seem to make sense when you look at that. You can kind of figure out why something happened. Whereas there are other platforms where you'll get some random rogue number and you'll be like, this just doesn't make sense. It doesn't align with everything else. Very rarely does that happen in YouTube. The one that I really like inside of YouTube is looking at the percentage viewed for a video. So you can watch a video and see how long did somebody stay on that video before they ended up leaving. And you can see, an 8-minute video, for example, what percentage of people stayed from the start to the very finish, or where did they drop off? And is there something you need to do inside of the video to prolong when they drop off? So in terms of social analytics, for me, YouTube far and away the best one for me. And on the Google Analytics side, I really like the data you can find under Tech Overview. So this is where it talks about people that visit your websites and what devices, browsers, platforms, etc. that they use. And I know in the world that I live in, I do a lot of work with municipalities, especially rural municipalities. And it's really interesting to take some of the data I see there and compare it to a client in a different industry that's maybe more in an urban environment. And oftentimes I see with municipalities and government related websites, the visitation from desktop computers is much higher than mobile devices. But I know, you guys will know this too from working with other clients in different industries. It might be a 50-50 split, mobile and desktop. But I've just found in general that rural municipalities, that their data tends to skew a little bit different than everybody else. And what I like about that is not just looking at the data, but starting to figure out, okay, why is that the case? Why is that happening? And that's really where the the value of that data really comes from. So for me, on the social side, YouTube analytics, on the Google analytics, that tech overview is an easy one. It's something you can see right off the bat. There's so many cool things you can do in analytics, but that's one for me that just kind of jumps out right away. Duncan, you work a lot in analytics. What do you like?
I mean, my understanding of this is more on the ad side. So,
Mm-hmm.
while I think you were talking more about kind of organic YouTube metrics, I mean, YouTube is pretty good. There's some pretty good view metrics there. I think for me, though, the one that I at least find the most interesting is actually LinkedIn analytics for ads. You know, I don't love LinkedIn in general for like an ads platform. It does do what it needs to do for the B2B segment, but what I really do appreciate is the amount of detail and data you get coming back. So you get, you run a search campaign, not a search campaign, you run like a newsfeed campaign in LinkedIn, but you get information on, the industries, like the people that click and even the people that just see it. It'll tell you metrics on the industries that they're in, their job title, their level of like hierarchy in the business, like are they mid-level, are they CEO level, C-class, or are they that lower down the food chain. But you also get insight into what companies they work at. So I actually get a sense of like, okay, how many views did I get with so-and-so company? So as an example, if you're running a campaign for B2B and you're trying to target specific businesses, you can literally go back to the client and say, yeah, we made your ad visible, or this many people clicked that ad from this company. So it gives you really granular data, which I appreciate as a advertiser, but it also is kind of a bit of a proof case for telling them that you could reach people at specific businesses, because that's a pretty challenging thing to do sometimes with digital marketing. But if you're trying to create noise or create visibility to a specific brand with other companies, this is a cool way to do it. And like I say, have data that supports that you're actually achieving your goal of being visible to these types of people. So to me, it's pretty cool. The results are mixed, but I'd say in terms of data and analytics, that's probably one of my favorite for ads.
Yeah. It reminds me a lot, Duncan, of what we used to get from Facebook in terms of the people that clicked on ads. And then that all started to go away with the rise in privacy. But with LinkedIn, yeah, people add so much to their profiles that when we find out who clicked on an ad, it's like we have everything we need to know about them. Like you said, where they are positioned in a company even.
Yeah, I mean, Facebook people aren't updating their profiles anymore. So
No.
LinkedIn people update them all the time because they want jobs. And it does create a more data full environment from an ad perspective, which I think is why I appreciate the metrics that they can provide.
I like LinkedIn too. Good one, Duncan. And Ian, I guess in terms of analytics for you, you like battling Meta and you like battling Meta Business Suite especially. So whether you like it or not, you probably do see some meta data every once in a while because you're there.
Yeah, it's not something I'm digging around in a huge amount with the social side of things, to be honest. But yeah, in terms of the Google Analytics, which was another part of the original question, I guess there's no real one sort of metric or anything that you can just say, okay, this is, if you're only going to check 5 things, these are the 5 things to check. I suppose the advice would be more, don't log into Google Analytics without a purpose. Why are you logging in, and what is it you're trying to learn or find out?
Sorry, I didn't answer that part of the question. Oops. I didn't even answer that part of the question.
Duncan,
you can fill in all the gaps that I'm about to miss out, Duncan. But yeah, so like if you have, for example, an online store, then you might notice that there's a lot of people abandoning the cart, for example. So then you're like, okay, why are people abandoning their cart midway through a sale? You log into analytics with that question in mind, and then that guides you on the things you want to look at. So what do all the people who are completing their sale have in common? What are all the things in common of the people who are abandoning? And you might find, for example, that, my bounce rate is very, very low on desktop, but very high on mobile. So you go and look at that page on a mobile and you realize it's not loading correctly, or it's not showing them the thank you page, or it's not showing them what's in their cart or something like that if they're viewing on a certain device, like you were referring to, Brian, or in a certain browser or things like that. So it's really the question comes first, and then I think the analytics is providing you with all the data points that you can solve that puzzle. So yeah, there's no one particular metric that I would say to look into, but just to understand that, think about it in real terms. What am I hoping to learn? And then that will guide you.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point, because you're right. If you just open Google Analytics or social media analytics for that point and just go, okay, what am I going to find out? It's like, well, why were you looking to begin with? What's the question? And then go find the data. I find that all the time when I'm working with clients to make dashboards for the reporting. I can just throw up a bunch of data points, but it's like, what are you trying to figure out? And then let's pull the data that's relevant to your question so it's easier for you to track.
Yeah,
Duncan, do you want to go back to Google Analytics, or are you just done?
Sure. I was actually just going to say that there's a lot of metrics obviously to look at in there. I think one of the coolest additions, at least for me, is that you can link Google Search Console to analytics. So for those that don't necessarily know what Google Search Console is, it's basically that organic arm of Google. It looks at all the keywords that are triggering organic traffic to your site. So in the past, if you've ever tried to look up the keywords that showed under organic search, it would just say not set or not available because it's a secure environment, HTTPS. Google encrypts it, so you can't see it visibly publicly on Google Analytics. But by creating that simple link to Google Search Console, all of that data, and I'm talking all of it, and if you've looked at Google Search Console recently, they made some huge updates so that you can get years worth of data for your URL, and it can also backdate it. So like if you don't have one and you make one now, you can go and see a lot of the data for organic going back quite a long time for your website. And that pulls it all right into your Google Analytics. So if you can link that up, you get real vision into the organic keywords that you are not only getting clicks from, but even just showing for. And that can be used to drive ad, keyword targeting. It can be used to drive new content for your website. Yeah. It's pretty much invaluable. And like I say, they made a huge update to Search Console to allow people to have data going back years, whereas before it used to reset every 3 months. And then if you weren't on top of it, you wouldn't be able to see all of this. So highly recommend leveraging that Google Search Console thing because it gives you a much fuller picture of your position online and how people find you, especially from that organic side of things, which usually for many years has kind of been hidden under a cloak of not set or not found.
Yeah. Search Console, very underused in my opinion. It is. When I do social strategies, I'll look at analytics, but I'll get all into Search Console because you'll identify content gaps, what people are searching for when they come to your website, what are they searching for in general. Like
also much stuff. Finding out that certain keyword terms are somehow ranking, and you're getting traffic and visitors for something that you probably don't even want to show up for.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It really gives you a sense of how the world sees your site when they're searching. Because we go to the websites that we manage pretty much directly all the time, so it's interesting to see that other side of the business development picture.
There you go, Hector. Take that information and walk into the Tucson sunset with it, and hope you learn something. Duncan, you sent me an interesting article the other day. It talked about how nearly 60% of new marketing grads are working in high school level jobs 5 years after graduation, which is somewhat alarming. And I don't know if it's all that surprising in some ways, but at the same time, 60% is 60%. The article cites a combination of AI and an oversaturation of grads is to blame. So a question, kind of a hot tip for today before we kind of wrap up. If you were talking to a new grad who wanted to get a leg up on the competition, what marketing skills would you recommend that they pick up in their spare time? Ian, what would you be telling a new grad?
In terms of marketing skills, I would definitely say getting a good grounding in sales. I think sales can sometimes have quite a negative image, the way people imagine salespeople. However, understanding sales can have a huge impact on all aspects of your career and your daily life. Whether it's it'll improve your copywriting, it'll improve your presentation skills, it'll improve your ability to write things like resumes and cover letters. It'll help your interpersonal relationships, both in your personal life and your work life. It'll help you with negotiation. Even if you are 5 years out of university and you've got your degree and you are applying for what's considered a high school job, it'll help you in that interview negotiate for better terms, a higher position, better wages, all those things. So I think getting a grounding in sales is can be useful for absolutely anyone in their daily life.
Yeah, and I've mentioned it on the podcast before. For me,
Right, sure, yeah.
retail sales completely changed how I look at marketing, and that was something that was very beneficial. Duncan, how about you? I know you've done some mentorships with students. What kind of things would you recommend in their spare time or in addition to schooling that they might want to pick up in terms of skills?
Oh, I want to start by just simply saying that the 60% metric to me is more a reflection, I think, on the quality of the schooling to prepare students for real world marketing.
True. Yeah.
Than anything else. Like I mean, even in my marketing background, it's always very, what's the right word? It's about theory. Mostly is what they're teaching about theory versus like practical uses for
like tactics and stuff. Yeah.
And understanding how the platforms work. Like even in digital, like very few people understand. Like they've ran a campaign or two, but they don't really understand the nuances of the campaigns. They don't understand how to build a strategy. I think a lot of the skills that they're learning in school, like I say, are theory-based and not enough practical skills for what agencies need nowadays. So, I mean, in my opinion, they need the practical skills. They need to have built and ran campaigns and looked at the metrics and then, to Ian's point earlier, reviewing analytics to try and determine what worked and what didn't. I think one of the biggest skills that even the people that we're hiring today is understanding the data and understanding what story it's trying to tell. So to Ian's point, if you have a landing page that's not working, how can you tell within analytics what are the signs that would suggest that that page is not working? So there's like little simple things like that, but I think if I was to give it a simple answer, it would be learn how to run digital ads, because I still think that's a rather in demand skill. But also learn how to explain it in layman's terms. Because a lot of grads will just spit out numbers and buzzwords, and you people's eyes glaze over. You need to be able to explain it in a way that everyone would understand, and I think that's sort of the biggest trick to all this. Again, kind of on that sales arm is how do you take a complex topic and simplify it so anyone can understand? And if you can do that well in marketing, I think that's how you start building client trust. You start, really developing as a marketer, is simply that act of being able to explain the complicated stuff simply. But in order to do that, you need to know what you're doing. So that's the trick. You need to have that experience, making campaigns, running them, understanding what's working and what's not, so that you can go into a meeting with confidence with a client and simply explain what you are going to do in layman's terms so that they get it and they're not just being wowed by a whole bunch of lingo and acronyms.
Yeah. And Duncan, to your ideas around being able to do that, that might be through volunteering to help build a campaign for, like a local business or something along those lines. Google's got a variety of really good courses, so you can at least understand the fundamentals before you try it. Maybe you've got a project on the side you could run a campaign for on your own. So there's ways to be able to dabble into that just so you have an idea of what it looks like. And then, anytime you have data, what does the data say? What's the story that it tells? Mine would be, Ian, you've talked about this in the past. I'm glad you didn't bring it up today because I had nothing else prepared. The idea of figuring out how to harness AI and write prompts and figure out how you can, take some of these AI-based tools and and work them into existing workflows and things of that nature. I think that's going to be a very hot skill. And I don't know if there's a school out there that can teach it because it changes so quickly, but being able to go into an interview and say, well, you know what? I think I can help you guys streamline this through using some of these tools, and not only understanding what the tools do, but understanding how to actually use them or prompt them or set them up in a way that will allow you to streamline things. That's something that I would definitely recommend too. And that's just doing the research, putting in the work.
One last point with this, I think another big one that's going to be coming from this AI boom is automations. So,
yeah.
A lot of companies have their way of doing things, which will get outdated over time. So if you can learn how to automate things for businesses or set up automation strategies, that could be incredibly valuable because it saves time and money. And that's what you really need to do to be an effective employee, is make your company money, which is, as capitalist as that sounds, that is literally the truth. So if you can find ways to generate revenue or value for the business that you work for, those are the types of skills that will matter. So, again, if you're coming into it and you don't know enough about marketing to run a campaign, they're spending money to train you to manage it, versus if you come in saying, hey, I have experience in this, I can help optimize that, I can automate this so you don't have to worry about it anymore. Now we're talking, because I can see the value in what you have to offer.
Yeah. And I'm waiting, Duncan, for when we have to do an interview one day and somebody comes in and says, I know lots about these tools. I can help you achieve this, or cut down on costs, or cut down on manpower that you need to do that. That would be a very interesting conversation, because I'd have time for that. I'd want to listen to that and learn more.
Exactly. You got to give me a reason to want to learn more. And we've heard it all in the marketing industry. We've interviewed hundreds of people. And that kind of a perspective coming in is going to raise some eyebrows and get you noticed.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And another good point, if you're going for an interview, get a haircut. Duncan got a haircut recently and it looks pretty good. Ian and I got haircuts too, but a little bit more noticeable. Okay, before we wrap up, guys, one last thing. This wasn't on the agenda. We're saying goodbye to an old friend. Not in a bad way. Oh. Nothing wrong. Nobody passed away. For the past 20 years, Duncan and I have managed a website called sirshanksalot.com based on our previous history in golf. Mm-hmm. And we recently sold it. So it was a fun ride. I think, Duncan, you would agree the way we got into this whole Strong Coffee marketing thing, a lot of the skills we picked up doing Sir Shanks a lot really transferred over. So we just finished talking about what could new grads do. Well, we kind of paved our own way by starting that website a long time ago, figuring out everything that we knew how to, could possibly do on the website: WordPress, content creation, understanding keywords, blah, 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 ads, and then moving that and transitioning that into what we do today. So it was weird to see it go, because it's been around. I noticed when we were transferring the domain, we registered the domain in July of 2004. So that's almost 20 years. Yeah, that we had the website. But in more recent times, probably the last 10 to 13 years, we had no time to write on it because we've been doing this. But so it has gone to a new home. But thank you for the memory, Sir Shanks. It was a lot of fun. Part of Duncan's going to get a new light for the podcast, thanks to Sir Shanks a lot. So next week you'll be glowing. Yeah. I will share one story. I've shared this Sir Shankslot story when I go and speak places, but when the idea of online and offline kind of melded together for me. So Sir Shankslot was based on the experiences that Duncan and I would have working in the golf business, selling golf stuff, teaching lessons, etc. on Duncan's side. And we would take all that knowledge and basically transfer it into a blog, and people would read it, but we never gave out our true names. No one really knew who we were. We were known as Sir Shanksalot and the Golf Drill Guru. I was working in a golf retail store here in Edmonton, and a gentleman walked in and he said, I would like to look at this particular set of Callaway irons. And I said, yeah, we got them over here on the rack. So I took them over and I was showing them to him. And he said, I've been doing a lot of reading online. And he started verbatim reciting a review about these irons. And about 3 sentences in, I realized that the review he had read that led him to make this purchasing decision was the one that I wrote on Sir Shanks-a-Lot. He doesn't know who I am. So I just sat there and I listened to it and I said, yeah, that's got some really good advice wherever you got that review from. That sounds spot on. And the gentleman bought the set of irons, never knowing that he bought the set of irons from the guy that wrote the review that got him to go into the store in the first place. So that's when it really hit home to me that people were doing research online and were trusting these sources online and then making purchasing decisions because of it. He just didn't know, and he might be still playing those irons thinking these are great irons thanks to that Sir Shanks-a-Lot guy. Well, yeah, that was me. So so it has gone on to greener pastures, but we
it's
will.
also worth noting that we hadn't updated in a few years, so like there's
more than a few, Duncan.
I know. So it went to a good home that will use its content in a
to their advantage,
wise fashion. Yes.
Yeah. So. Thank you, Sir Shanks-a-Lot. And with that, that's another episode in the books. Thanks so much for tuning in on YouTube, Instagram, Spotify, and now TikTok. We are on TikTok. I am battling TikTok on a daily basis, trying to figure out the creator tools and why things do what they do. But please follow us on there as well. We've also had some comments and some questions come in. We've been able to answer those. I got an email from somebody the other day that said, hey, we watch your podcast. That was pretty cool. So thank you very much for those. Great to be back with you guys. A big thanks to Duncan and Ian. We had some fun. We're going to be back next week, we promise. Now let's get back to work.
Thanks.
See you next time.